Welcome to the Bohol Experience. Here's a quick visual introduction to Bohol. Then I'll get started narrating my trip and all that I came across on this beautiful island in the Philippines. This is Eric. I just returned from the Philippines, and this time I did the Visayas region. And I'm going to focus this video on Bohol. So I'm going to take you through the various places that I traveled, a lot of the footage I was able to put together both on the ground and in the air with the drone, and kind of just give you a tour of what I saw while in Bohol. I started in the Alana Beach area, which is kind of like Hawaii for this kind of part of the world. A lot of the Asian countries, including Korea and also China, come here to Alana Beach, along with a lot of other places in Europe and a few people from the US. It's kind of like Maui-esque a little bit. But I guess it just is really, warm weather, a nice beach, and then there's along the beach here, the beautiful sunset we're looking at right now. But you basically have people wandering up and down, and then along the beach there are dive resorts, there are bars, there are dive shops, there are different restaurants. And then you see a lot of this type of entertainment where young kids especially come out and play for us. So let's take a listen. I got a kick how this little girl was tied to their brother with the string. Lots of seafood along the beach there for sale. That was some very interesting looking lobster type. Look at the shell color on that, completely different than what we have in the US. This was a cute couple. They were just kind of hanging out, and I noticed that their little girl was asleep. And then the lady offered me, I think they're coconuts. This is one of the restaurant kind of areas. They're trying to get your attention to come on in.
Oh, good. Thank you. Hello.
You got peanut?
Yeah.
No, thank you. Hey, you got a lechon later?
This little girl had just an amazing voice. I mean, how old is she? 8 years old? Here's another area kind of further up away from the beach, about a block up from the beach. This is kind of what it looks like. Lots of restaurants. There's also a lot of Thai massage places for some reason. Coffee shops, ice cream shops. And then they had this stage, which would be kind of fun for a band. I came across these kids kind of just having fun up there. Watch what they do. It's pretty interesting.
Good job. Mayo.
We got the one-hand cartwheel there. Sister wants to participate, but her little brother's stealing the show. This is at the Tarsier Sanctuary. So this is the road leading up into the sanctuary. It was funny because I was flying the drone to kind of get a look at the place, and these 3 dogs just didn't know what to make of the drone. So they're watching me, and they're watching the drone, they're watching me and watching the drone. Normally dogs don't bother me, don't make me nervous, but in the Philippines, probably not vaccinated, so you gotta be pretty careful. Anyway, this is coming up into the Tarsier Sanctuary. Very interesting creatures we're going to show you here in just a minute. Yeah, here's the dogs looking at me. Well, looking at the drone, flying the drone right in front of me. They weren't quite sure what to make of that, especially this one. I had the drone take a good look at him. They were just curious. It's kind of funny. Anyway, this is the entrance to the Tarsier Sanctuary. It's technically in the Kerala area of Bohol. And this is the road leading up to the sanctuary. It was quite pretty through the trees. You're probably about a good 30 or 40 minutes out of either Tagbilaran or the Pangl area in order to get up here to the sanctuary. Here's a view looking over the top of it. So tossing the drone up there so you can kind of see an overview. What's interesting with the tarsiers are there's tiny little monkey-like creatures with big eyes. And because they are susceptible to attacks from the air, from birds especially, they hide beneath the tree line. So they're never on top of the tree. They're just underneath the top level of the tree, and you'll see that in just a minute. They have some other natural predators, snakes being one of them, and then the other one is wild cats. So there's only about 200 left in this particular sanctuary. I did come across another sanctuary about a half an hour further into the countryside, and I'm not sure how many they had there, but at this particular one, it was protected for the most part, and it was down to 200 or so. This is the guide that was assigned to me. So basically, you go through this orientation because you got to be super quiet. These tarsiers, they're very territorial from the standpoint that they live completely by themselves, and they mark off of a territory, which probably isn't huge, but big enough that they don't want another tarsier in their territory. In fact, when they have mating season, once they consummate the act, they separate immediately and go back to their territory. So they live their entire lives completely alone. As you can see, they're very tiny. You know, you're talking about only a couple of pounds or about a kilo or two at the most. Big eyes. They're nocturnal. So I got here at 7 a.m. at the sanctuary. And that was kind of my routine in the Philippines. You know, it gets quite hot during the day. That direct sun is something else, along with the humidity usually hovering around 80%. So I'd get up about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning and then drive to wherever I was going to shoot that day. So on this particular day, I came out to this sanctuary. So I'm here first thing because they're going to go to sleep and sleep all day. And so I still wanted to catch them. And you can see this guy with his big eyes, and then he's got really interesting little toes and fingers. This guy starts rubbing his head against the branch. This guy was the most active one that I found. And this kind of protected enclosure area that's fenced off, there was only 10 that day. They have somebody that their whole time or full-time job is just to look for them, to try to find them. So when people come in and they go through the orientation, they're able to find them. In the orientation, they tell you you have to be extremely quiet. That if they get startled, they'll just have a heart attack, freak out, and die. And so there's no flash photography, no noise making of any kind. You have to be really, really careful because they're basically an isolated animal that live completely by themselves. And as you can see, the eyeballs are a big percentage of the face area. This guy's getting a good scratch on the branch here. Yeah, he was by far the most active one that I had seen. And they're only located in a couple areas in the Philippines, the entire Philippines, Bohol being the main one. And I guess their diet is primarily insects is what they live off of. I'm sure they eat some of the other fruit-type plants and things like that in the jungle. Oh, we had a good look at his eyes on this guy. You see his little toes and feet? How intricate they are? Look at him looking at us. Almost looks like a bat, you know. It's a monkey family, but kind of looks like a bat. Funny tail on that. This is Bohol itself, the island. Coming across, I actually left Dumaguete by ferry, and the ferry went to Siquijor Island first, and then dropped off people, picked up people, and then that was about a half an hour or so from Dumaguete to Siquijor Island, and then it was another about hour. It was total was 2 hours from Dumaguete to the Pangl, Tagbilaran area. So this is coming into Pangl. That's the airport where that plane took off from. What it looks like coming in from the ferry. And then here we're into the Tagbilaran port itself, which it did have some heavy shipping and all that type of thing, along with the tourist, boats that you would do. But as you can see, here comes some of the more bigger shipping lines, how they would receive, goods. And, the big thing in the Philippines are what they call the rolos. So you have these ferries where they drive trucks on them. They're loaded up from the distributor or the manufacturer, and then they drive around that island making their deliveries. And they just go from island to island that way. And as you can see, they also do some sea containers too. So the man-made forest is about another 15, 20 minutes further into the island away from Pangl along the coast, past the Tarjur Sanctuary. And this was planted in the 1970s. It's primarily mahogany, but it's completely a self-made forest, and it was super beautiful. There were parts of the road there that were just completely engulfed by the trees. It was like driving through a tunnel. Then along the way, I came across this Catholic church in Balar. Unfortunately, I didn't see a plaque for the name of it, but it looked like it had been there for quite some time. You know, the Spanish, they had been in the Philippines up until about 1898 is the beginning of the American colonial period where we got involved. But the 300 years prior to that, it was all the Spanish. And what the Spanish did is they planted these Catholic churches and built them, and they would create the center of town. So they would build a courtyard in front of them, and that would be kind of the primary town area where you would meet and have vendors and socialize. And it's super effective and completely used today. But some neat artwork in these stained glass windows throughout the church. Very intricate, bright colors. There's no lights on in the church. And this is about 9 o'clock in the morning or so. So everything you're seeing here is from natural light. And then it's very common to have some type of a structure at the very front. They usually are recognizing one of the saints or Mary. And then they continue on with the stained glass kind of throughout the whole sanctuary area, throughout the church. It's quite beautiful. They tend to leave the outside of the church as it is, and then the inside they maintain. So when I got a little further into Balar, I came across this Bohol Island State University. And I just liked the logo and the way it looked, and so I stopped and was kind of shooting in front of it. And then these students started walking in and waving. And in this particular area, I'm now about an hour from Tagbilaran, the main port city, or Pangl in the airport. I'm about an hour inland into the hills. And I didn't see any other Caucasians or other type of people other than the Filipinos in this general area. So I was just going to shoot the front of the campus. I was trying to get a shot of all the motorcycles off to the left because it runs up about 100 meters of scooters. And then these girls kept talking to me, waving to me, so I decided to come on and walk around the campus a little bit. And look, they're all just giggling and laughing, and they're pointing. Someone said, you know, foreigner. It was quite an interesting afternoon here. I was just in and out here about 5-10 minutes, but I did have some conversations with some of the people, and as you can see, it's like 99% girls.
Maayo buntag! How is everybody?
We're fine.
You're fine.
We're stressed.
What's that?
We're stressed.
So I talked to a lot of these different students, just kind of casually saying hello. And a lot of them want to be teachers in this particular group. And I asked them, you know, where in the Philippines do they want to be a teacher? So I said, where do you want to, you know, be a teacher? And they said, all of them said they want to come to the U.S. So that's kind of interesting. Then down the street, I found this fighting cocks for sale. So Sunday afternoons and evenings is a big sport for fighting cocks in the Philippines. And that's why if you ever talk to a Filipino on the phone there, you'll hear the roosters going off. And it's not so much for egg production, though they do some of that for sure. But it's more because they have cockfights. I came across this one area. This is actually a cemetery on the other side of kind of a rice field. I just thought it was kind of interesting. I had never seen this kind of lineup before with these little huts and things over the above ground gravesite, basically. So that's what we're looking at here. Now, this is totally cool. This is called a bolo knife manufacturer, and they make the bolo knives right here. And I was just kind of enamored with this because this is all made by hand, and it's a pretty cool process that they go through. So let's take a look and watch these guys as they heat up the metal, and then now once it's hot, they're going to beat it into submission basically with these sledgehammers. And I thought the rhythm they kind of had, which makes sense because if they get off, they're going to hit somebody, was pretty cool. Yeah, I just got a real kick out of this, that they were making the whole thing there and then carving the wood for the handle and also for the sheath that they put it in. So I took a look. There's different sizes. Now, I guess from what I've heard is if you grow up in the province area, especially around these farms that they have around here, then all of the boys have a bolo knife. In fact, it's very common for the bolo knives to go to school with the boys. That's just a common thing. And some of these knives are quite big. But as you can see, they get the metal good and hot. And then I think he's like turning a blower onto it to get the fire even hotter. And then they'll, then beat it into submission is what I call it. But, shape the size of it. So this is what it looks like once it's done. I really like this particular bolo knife. And so I ended up buying one. Now there's a whole story behind that because I was super excited about the bolo knife. And on the other side of the blade here, it actually was kind of rusty. So I asked the guy, hey, can you file this down and get rid of the rust on this thing? Because I like that particular knife. So this is him getting rid of kind of the rusty, debris, whatever was left over. I don't know if it got rained on or what happened. So that's why he's sharpening it up for me. And he wanted 1,500 pesos for that, right? So 1,000 pesos is about 20 bucks because the exchange rate is technically about 55 pesos to the dollar, but you generally just kind of use 50 pesos. So he was looking for about, he was asking for 1,500 pesos or 30 bucks. And we went back and forth. I think I got him down to either 12 or 1,300 pesos. So that's kind of what I ended up paying about, what was that, about 24 bucks, something like that. So he got it all nice and sharp, and I was super excited. And then it was too big to fit on my scooter, so we had to figure out how to take its sheath and then wrap it in tape and then put a string around it, and then we tied it onto this little kind of catch that you could kind of hang a hat or something on the scooter, and that totally worked. The problem I had with it is I had it with me for the rest of the trip, and when I went from island to island by ferry, I would tell the security, because they do run your suitcase through the radar thing or x-ray thing, and then I would tell them that I've got this bolo knife and no problem. But at the airport, they weren't sure. I was changing planes in Hong Kong on the way home, and they didn't think Hong Kong was going to allow it. They reached out to Hong Kong, and they never got an answer before my flight, so I had to leave it with them. I lost it. Totally bummed. I love that bolo knife. It's the coolest thing ever. So now I've gone another 15, 20 minutes further. I'm about an hour to an hour, 15 minutes from Pangl area on the coast, up in Chocolate Hills, and just taking in the view of all of these mounds that they have kind of throughout the area. It was very tropical, quite beautiful up there. There was quite a bit of wind and breeze. So it was like the coolest part of the whole day. And then as you can see, there's quite a cloud cover. So up to this point, I was fine. I knew that there was a chance of rain that day, but it didn't start happening until I got up here. And unfortunately, I'm on a scooter. I call it a scooter. It's a Yamaha. No, not Yamaha. Yamaha is one of the scooters I rent. The other one is Honda. This is a Honda Click. And it was a super nice bike. So, a little more power, a little bit bigger, a little more stable. I guess the beginning line is more like the Honda Beat. But I really like the Click. But this was the view from up on top. You climb up these stairs, and this is kind of what you see from there. That's looking all the way towards the ocean at that point. So very lush, a lot of stairs to get up to the top, not a big deal. They're a beautiful place, and the coolest I had been in about a week. And that's the one thing about the Philippines. Don't let anybody kid you. It's hot and humid all year. And this is the rainy season. I'm here at the first 2 weeks of September, and it was hot. From there, I went to the Lobak River, and it's a pretty cool river. You take this cruise. And there's something I want to show you here on the inside, which probably will answer a question for some people that probably weren't aware of this in just a minute that I'm going to show you. But it had a really nice terminal. Looked relatively new. And yeah, it was a really nice setup that they had. You basically would walk through this, you'd buy a ticket, and then they have these boats that they go on that they provide a lunch for you. And so that was kind of, a highlight of it. And there's a couple of things that happen I'll show you along the way. So it was 1,000 pesos, so $20 for about, it's probably like an hour, hour and a half, something like that. And I think they run from like 10 to 2:30. I took the last boat. I had a hard time making it to the terminal, but this is what I wanted to show you. So you see these trash cans outside of all the potties. And you say, why are there trash cans outside of the potties? Well, look at the sign. People have complained that there's not often toilet paper when they go to a restroom in the Philippines. And here's why. Here comes the sign. Please do not flush tissues, towels of any kind. That means toilet paper. So most of the toilets in the Philippines, outside of the nice hotels, they don't want you flushing the paper. In fact, one of the hotels I stayed at, even though it was a nice hotel, they had a little trash can. They wanted you to put the tissue in there. Kind of disgusting, but that's what they do. So a lot of people have complained, how come there's not enough toilet paper in the bathrooms? Well, they don't typically use it. They use something else. It's like a big water cup that they wash themselves, and they typically use that water cup and water only without tissue. This is the boat that was for the lunch type thing. It's interesting how they get pushed by this little motor thing from the back. But it was a very calm river, quite beautiful, very easygoing, and we were protected even though it was starting to rain a little bit, but quite beautiful along the river. I did see various small Filipino-type boats called a bangka, and it's looks like a canoe with an outrigger on either side, left and right, and come in different sizes, but that's their primary means over here as far as boating goes, and they often put a motor on the back of them. Sometimes they paddle the smaller ones. I did see a couple of people paddleboarding up this river, which looked kind of fun. Thought that would be fun to do. But overall, it was super quiet. And let's see, this was on a Thursday, and we're now between we left at 2:30 and we're heading down the river, so it's probably on the way to 3 o'clock now. The food was fine as far as on the boat, and they had a lot of options. It was all just set up. You kind of help yourself, so you can kind of pick what you wanted. But the food was fine. Lots of pork, chicken, and then various fruits and vegetables. Yeah, so this is one of those bangka boats I'm talking about that's got the outriggers on the left and the right to stabilize it. That's how they do it over here. So again, I'm exploring the island of Bohol in this particular video. This last trip, I spent the 2 weeks in the Visayas, which is the central part of the Philippines. And basically, the Visayas is made up with the islands like Negros, which includes Dumaguete, and on the far side, Bacolod. It includes Siquijor, Bohol, and Cebu. So it would be kind of the central part of the Philippines. The Philippines is broken into 3 regions. The Luzon region, which is near Manila, that's quite a big island, a lot of population over there. Then you have the Visayas, which is kind of in the center of the country. And then you have kind of more to the east. Now you're going to get into like Mindanao, which is a big island. That's where you have Davao, CDO, and there's some other islands kind of north of that. So here you can see the food that we had. And it was fine. Of course, there's rice. You can't have a Filipino meal without rice and noodles. And of course, lots of fish and shrimp. Kind of the staples. Chicken. But of course, pork. You know, it's not a party unless they have lechon, which is basically a young barbecue pig. So that's kind of what we're looking at there. Yeah. And then they had this couple that was playing. She actually had a pretty good voice. And then I'm surprised the guy in the back there with the sunglasses and the army fatigues, he's from the Coast Guard. So they got a Coast Guard guy going up and down on the boat for safety. I don't think there's any issues in Bohol. It's more Mindanao where you have to be careful. There's the autonomous region that tends to be wanting to be independent from the Philippines and is primarily Muslim. So we're back going down the river again. Lots of palm trees, obviously kind of muddy along the river banks a little bit. Kind of a pretty green to the water. I don't think the boat that we're on had a very big draft. It's only a couple of feet, so I would guess this river is pretty shallow overall. I'm sure they try to stay to the middle of it as much as they can. And it might get real interesting when it's raining, because I would imagine that river starts getting a lot rougher and a lot more water, because when it rains over here, it really pours. And they do have kind of, as part of it as like a rainy monsoon type season. And when you hit that time of year, you can certainly have a lot of rain at one time. Lately, there's been quite a bit of flooding in the Luzon area, especially Manila. They've been hit. On my particular trip, there was 2 or 3 back-to-back typhoons. And they call it a typhoon, but it's the same as a hurricane. It's just kind of a local colloquialism that they call it a typhoon. Here's the guy that's got the separate little boat that pushes the big boat with the motor on it. That's kind of interesting flatboat idea that they do. So fortunately for me, I never got caught in any of the typhoons, even though there were several around. In fact, the weather's starting to change this day because there's a typhoon off in the distance. So it's bringing wind and rain. In fact, you can see it now. The palm trees are starting to move. Whereas when I first got there, they were totally dead quiet. It made for a challenging day because basically I was on this motorcycle kind of exploring the area for the whole day, a good hour and a half from the hotel, and it rained on me for the rest of the day. So hard to see, couldn't get to my phone. My phone actually died. I had to figure out my way back to the hotel without my phone, so that was interesting. So as part of this kind of river cruise deal, they have these ladies waiting for us to do some little music and a dance. So that was kind of fun and unexpected. There's a dance that they're going to do with these bamboo poles. I forget the name of it, but you got to be quite coordinated to pull off their dance. And they were trying to get people to come in and try it. So I think it takes some practice or you fall flat on your face. But this was kind of fun for the ladies all dancing and playing music. Pick up ukulele there, 900 pesos, so just under 20 bucks, about $18. if you watch, there's a rhythm. Tap, tap, spread. Tap, tap, spread. Tap, tap, spread. Yeah, so once you get the rhythm kind of figured out, not a big deal. They were really trying to get people to come off the boat to try it. Okay, this guy's gonna do it. Flip-flops and all. Oh, they're going to go quick for us. That's impressive. They're really moving. They're actually spinning around like they're happy with themselves. Alright, we're back to singing and dancing again. I think they're going to close off the show here for us. And then we're going to shove off and head back up the river. Pretty much everyone's got a little ukulele and they're playing away. So I guess they do this from 10 o'clock to about 4 o'clock, so about 6 hours each day. There's quite a few people there, actually. I'd say there was probably about 40 people on the boat. And there's at least, what do we have here, 25 people on this little float that they have. It's kind of funny, they're not all quite in sync here. If you're watching, they're supposed to be playing and turning. I thought this was funny. I was leaving on the boat and all these dogs are looking at us. There's like this dog gang sitting together on the shore watching everything that's going on. What do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 dogs just hanging out there. Again, don't mind the dogs, but like I said before, they're not probably vaccinated, so you don't want to get bit. In fact, in the cities, they got all kinds of dog bite clinics, so it's a very common thing, unfortunately. You know, basically, they're a very effective burglar alarm. They don't bring them inside, they leave them outside all night, and if they hear any noise, they're barking. When I was out driving around the island looking for places to shoot, I had to be really careful, because if I was anywhere near a residential area, especially if it was early in the morning or in the evening when there's less light, it was just a few seconds and there'd be a dog on me looking at me and wondering what I was doing there. So I had to be pretty careful about that. Most of them are not aggressive or anything like that, but they're there to check you out, and that's their job, and that's what they do. It makes it a challenge driving the motorcycles through the countryside, because they're often asleep in the middle of the road. So either you go around them, sometimes they get up, but there's a heavy use of your horn over there, especially with the scooters and cars, because there's so many of these dogs. All right, so we're cruising back up the river now from where we started. You know, it's funny, I was looking at this footage at the time. I remember this really well. I thought it looked like the Jungle Cruise at Disneyland here in California. Of course, it's not real in California. It's all man-made, but this is the real thing here, going through the jungle. And once again, they got a lot of unique, different types of shapes of boats and things. Pretty color to the water. Like a light green. Again, I think it's fairly shallow. This reminds me of like that movie Apocalypse Now, where they're going deep up into, it was Vietnam at first, but I think they went past that up into the next country. What was that, Thailand or something in the movie? but they were going all by themselves in this one boat. Kind of a wild movie, but it is interesting to watch even today. You see a very young Martin Sheen. There's a lot of other famous people that are in that movie. Had that one famous line. I'm trying to remember the actor's name. It'll come to me, but there's nothing like the smell of napalm in the morning. He was kind of a classic colonel in that movie. And they're surfing when the missiles are going off, the bombs are going off. He wanted the guys to surf, so they're out there surfing and things are blowing up. Anyway, it just reminded me of that movie a little bit because it kind of looked the same. Going through the jungle. As you can see, Bohol is a very pretty place. It was very different getting away from the major city, which was Tagbilaran. Tagbilaran has got quite a bit of traffic, especially during rush hour. And so that's the main area that has traffic. Pangl also has traffic. So Pangl is about 15, 20 minutes from Tagbilaran, depending on the traffic. Here's the bank boat that I was talking about with the outriggers on the outside. Very quiet, very peaceful. So this is kind of what it looks like inland on Bohol, away from the traffic and all that. In fact, once I got outside the city, the next hour going up into these hills, into the mountains here, very little traffic, almost none. I mean, just a few, motorcycles or cars here or there. And makes it really enjoyable to explore. I found overall, I usually had Google Maps out, but I found that Waze worked much better. So if you have the Waze app, W-A-Z-E, it's much better giving directions. I found that Google Maps a little hard to follow while I'm riding the scooter. It had like a holder for the phone. Yeah, Google Maps just was a little bit harder to, navigate. Where Waze tells you, okay, turn left in 200 meters, turn right. And it was still very accurate, even though I'm way inland on Bohol. Not sure how that happens because I thought that was a crowdsourced app. But it worked phenomenal until it started to rain. I had to put my phone away. And then eventually it died. I had to find my way back in the rain, in the dark, on a motorcycle. That was a bit challenging. When my phone, since it died, I pulled over once I got to the city, which was Tagbilaran. I pulled over and found a little shop that would have a cord to charge my iPhone. And after that, I never left home without a charger. Because fortunately for me, on the particular Honda I had, it did have a USB port to charge my phone. So I made the mistake of leaving the charger back at the hotel room. I should have had it with me. So I charged it up at this little shop enough to see how to get back to the hotel. And soaking wet, tired, I made it back to the hotel. Okay. Yeah, in fact, on the way, one of the first things I did, this is not another one of these platforms that they do the little show on. So one of the other things I did is, since there was, very much a province area, there's no retail of any kind. It's just locals in front of their homes maybe have a little sari store, which is just a little tiny store of whatever goods they decide to sell. Usually it's groceries and a few things you'd pick up at the drugstore. And I asked them if they had a rain suit, and it took a couple times, but I actually found one. It was way too tight, but at least got me a little bit out of the rain. And then here's a couple going down on the paddle boards. That looked like fun. I think that would be a fun thing to do. When you can see the homes along the river, the province area especially, but pretty much throughout the Philippines, wherever you go, you'll have a nice home and then you'll have a very impoverished home right next door. often squatters, someone that doesn't own the land but built a little shack. And unfortunately, there's still a very high poverty rate. You can see it's starting to rain. Look carefully, there's little drops coming down here or there. But more and more students are going to college, and then they learn English as a second language in school, and that allows them to get these jobs in what they call the BPO industry, which is business process outsourcing, or call centers. Same thing. Very popular in the major cities, Manila, Cebu City, and several other places. So a lot of the Filipinos have excellent English. The call centers can be male and female, but I think it's predominantly female. All right, we're going back underneath the bridge here, heading back towards the wharf area where we started. You can see the other boats. Pretty good size. Somebody had a creative bent about them, like the fence, they put the piano keys on it. Kind of interesting. Never know what you'll find over there. There's a big version of these banca boats. Yeah, so no matter the size, they still kind of do that outrigger thing for stability. A lot of those boats are on the open ocean. You know, there's 7,000 islands in the Philippines, so fishing is a very dominant thing there. And the diet's primarily fish and rice and vegetables. And we're coming back to the end of our tour here on the Lobak River. But I enjoyed it. It was very worthwhile. The lunch was decent. You know, you had a lot of choices to kind of choose from. And yeah, it was just kind of relaxing, probably an hour and a half or so. But I thought it was totally worth it for $20. Get lunch, get a tour of the river, people sing and dance. That was good. There's an old Catholic church across the wharf area here. Trying to get some of it on camera. That's pretty big place right there. And then down the road from here, where there's a place where they have both butterflies and pythons at the same place. Not the combination you normally think of as butterflies and pythons, but you pay an entrance fee and you can check out the butterflies and check out the snakes. They also have a eco park that's kind of between this Lobak River area, which is basically almost to Balar, and then to the Chocolate Hills. Look at the size of this guy's guitar. Almost sound like a bass. Now these guys were waiting for us to come off the boat, and as soon as we start getting down the wharf area, they fired up, and kind of fun to hear them play. And that's the Philippines. Singing karaoke's at retail locations where they have rooms that you bring your friends, and they've got a TV set and speakers and a microphone, and you do karaoke with your friends, and you can order food if you want, and off they go. So that was my trip to Bohol. I'm going to do separate videos for the other islands I went to, but just wanted to show you all the activity in Bohol. I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for watching. See you next time.